Ladies and gentlemen, when we speak of channeling a man's sexual energy, we are not speaking merely of seduction in the vulgar sense, but of something far more ancient and sacred, the capacity of the feminine psyche to awaken the deep unconscious forces within the masculine. Sexual energy is not only a biological impulse, it is a symbolic fire, a primal current flowing through the archetypal masculine, often unrecognized even by the man himself. When a woman learns to channel that force, not suppress it, not manipulate it, but guide it, she becomes not an object of obsession, but the initiator of transformation. And that is where his obsession begins, not with her body alone, but with the mystery she carries. Every man carries within him the Anima, his inner feminine soul image. She appears to him in dreams, in fantasies, in moods and projections. When he meets a woman who mirrors this unconscious figure, something stirs in him that is deeper than attraction. It is recognition. He sees not just a woman, but a lost piece of his own soul. This is why sexual energy, when met consciously, becomes obsession, not rooted in control, but in the longing for wholeness. Sexual energy, when stripped of its biological immediacy and understood symbolically, reveals itself as one of the most potent archetypal forces within the human psyche. It is not simply an instinct to reproduce or a desire to possess, but a sacred fire that rises from the depths of the unconscious, pointing towards something far more fundamental, the soul's yearning for union, transformation, and wholeness. In every age and culture, the erotic force has been both worshipped and feared, because it contains within it the potential to disrupt the ego's orderly structure, to awaken latent energies, and to dissolve boundaries that the conscious mind clings to. In this sense, sexual energy is not personal, it is archetypal. It belongs not to the individual, but to the collective unconscious. The woman who understands this does not view sexuality merely as a transaction or performance. She knows, consciously or not, that her presence can activate this archetypal fire in the man, stirring energies within him that he himself may not fully understand. When she carries this energy with awareness, she becomes an initiator, not a seductress. She does not channel sexuality for approval, but as a living current of psychic truth. She is not concerned with control, for the archetypal feminine does not operate through domination, but through deep magnetism, the kind that emerges from a rooted connection to her own unconscious. Her erotic presence then becomes symbolic, a living flame that speaks not only to the man's body, but to his soul. The fire she awakens in him is not linear or logical, it is chaotic, consuming, alchemical. It dissolves the surface of his consciousness and brings him into contact with his own inner feminine, the Anima. This is why men often describe such women as unforgettable, haunting, or maddening. They are not obsessed with the woman as she is, but with what she has activated in them. It is not her body alone they desire, but the lost part of their own psyche that she unknowingly reflects. In this way, the sexual energy between a man and a woman becomes the flame of initiation. But this fire must be held, not exploited. It must be honored, not manipulated. For what one awakens in another must first be born within the self. In myth, fire is often stolen from the gods or guarded by dragons, because it is dangerous in unworthy hands. So too with sexual energy. If approached unconsciously, it becomes compulsive, destructive, and devouring. But when held with reverence and psychological maturity, it becomes the sacred fire of transformation. A woman who channels this force with awareness does not become an object of desire. She becomes a symbol of something eternal. She is no longer merely a woman in the eyes of the man, but the vessel through which his unconscious seeks liberation. And so, the obsession he feels is not merely lust. It is the pull of the archetypal fire she has ignited in him, calling him into the depths of his own becoming. When a man becomes obsessed with a woman, it is seldom the woman herself he is truly consumed by. It is more often the unconscious recognition of something lost, something buried deep within his own psyche, now awakened and projected onto her. This is the anima, his inner feminine image, long dormant in the shadows of his unconscious, now stirred into motion by the encounter with a woman whose presence resonates with that inner figure. He does not love her as she is in reality. He loves what she symbolizes. In this, obsession is not affection gone astray, but the psyche's desperate attempt to reunite with a forgotten piece of itself. The anima, in Jungian terms, is not merely a man's idea of femininity. It is the living bridge between his conscious ego and the depths of the unconscious. She speaks in dreams, moods, fantasies, longings that defy logic, and when a man meets a woman who carries the qualities of his anima, often unconsciously, there is a magnetic pull, a psychic intoxication. He experiences fascination, yearning, even madness, because he is no longer relating to a woman as a person, but to an archetype emerging through her. She becomes a mirror, a container, a portal, and he, unaware of the projection, believes it is she who holds the key to his inner completion. This is the psychological root of obsession. It is not merely sexual attraction, nor is it based on shared values or common goals. It is symbolic recognition. The man's psyche cries out for the soul, and when a woman unknowingly embodies the soul image, she is elevated beyond human proportions. She becomes divine in his eyes, untouchable, necessary. The more unconscious the man is of this process, the more intense the obsession becomes, because the psyche is attempting, through her, to reach its own lost wholeness. In this way, obsession is not desire misdirected, it is the soul's cry disguised. Yet this recognition is dangerous when it remains unconscious. The woman, overwhelmed by the intensity of his need, may feel suffocated, idealized, or objectified. She becomes the canvas for his psychic drama rather than a partner in mutual encounter. If she is unaware of the role she is playing, she may internalize the projection and inflate with power, or collapse under the weight of it. The man, too, may swing between adoration and resentment, for no human being can permanently embody an archetype without distortion. To recognize the anima in obsession is to begin the work of reclaiming the projection. The woman who has awakened the archetype is not the anima herself, but a vessel through which the soul is calling. If the man is courageous, he can use this recognition not to possess the woman, but to descend into his own depths, to integrate the feminine within, and to free her from the burden of his projections. It is in this act of psychic withdrawal and inner union that true love becomes possible, no longer bound by illusion, but grounded in self-awareness. The obsession, then, is not a curse, but a calling. A summons from the unconscious, using the outer form of a woman to awaken the inner path of individuation. There is a profound difference between attraction that is manipulated and magnetism that is embodied. The former arises from anxiety, the latter from essence. Feminine magnetism is not a technique nor a performance. It is the natural radiance of a woman who has reclaimed the parts of herself that were once rejected, hidden, or given away. She does not become magnetic by seeking approval or external validation, but by inhabiting her own psychic reality so fully that her presence begins to alter the energetic field around her. She draws in not by force, but by gravity, by the weight of her own authenticity. This is the mysterious power of the self-possessed feminine. In the realm of depth psychology, the woman who has entered into relationship with her own unconscious becomes a living symbol. She has confronted her shadow and withdrawn her projections. She no longer seeks to be completed by the masculine, for she has met her own inner animus and integrated its energy into her being. The result is a psychic equilibrium, an inner harmony that creates an outer allure. She is no longer driven to impress, to seduce, to be chosen. She becomes the chooser, not from arrogance but from a sacred stillness that says, I am already whole. To possess oneself, in the Jungian sense, is to draw back the fragments of the soul that have been scattered through trauma, social conditioning, and unconscious roles. The self-possessed woman knows where her boundaries begin and end. She does not confuse attention with intimacy nor desire with value. Because she is no longer performing for the male gaze, her energy is not chaotic or desperate. It is concentrated, and this concentration of soul becomes a powerful attractor. Men sense it, often without understanding it. They are pulled toward her not because she flatters their ego, but because she activates something dormant within them, the call to depth, to truth, to meaning. Feminine magnetism, then, is not about how she looks, what she says, or how well she plays the game. It is about how deeply she has rooted into herself. This inner rooting creates a field of presence that commands attention without seeking it. The self-possessed woman may be quiet or expressive, soft or fierce, sensual or restrained, but in every case, she radiates something rare in the modern world: psychic integrity. She is not divided against herself. She is not pretending to be someone she is not. And this congruence between inner world and outer expression is what generates true magnetism. In myth, such women are often depicted as priestesses, queens, or enchantresses, not because they control others, but because they have mastered themselves. The real secret of feminine power is not in seduction, but in sovereignty. It is the power of presence, of depth, of alignment. And it is precisely this power that causes the masculine to turn toward her, not in pursuit of conquest, but in reverence for the mystery she carries. She becomes not an object of desire, but a symbol of the soul's longing. Obsession is rarely about the object upon which it fixates. In most cases, it is a psychic event, a phenomenon born not in the outer world, but in the inner theater of the unconscious. When a man becomes obsessed with a woman, what he is truly encountering is not her, but his own unintegrated material projected outward in symbolic form. She becomes the screen upon which his soul's contents are cast. She holds a place in his life not merely because of her appearance or behavior, but because she carries, for him, the image of something unresolved, unknown, or long buried within his psyche. This is the nature of psychological projection. It externalizes the inner world, disguising it as reality. In the Jungian sense, projection is the unconscious transfer of one's own psychic content, archetypes, unresolved emotions, shadow elements, onto another person. The intensity of obsession reveals the power of what is being projected. The more unconscious the material, the more overwhelming the emotion. The woman in this dynamic becomes the embodiment of a man's inner feminine, his anima. She may awaken in him an ancient longing, a desire not only for intimacy but for inner union, for wholeness. Yet because he is unaware that what he loves is not truly her, but a reflection of his own lost parts, he is tormented by the illusion that she alone holds the key to his fulfillment. This creates a distortion in perception. The woman is no longer seen as she truly is. She is idealized or demonized, elevated or degraded, depending on whether she affirms or threatens the projection. The man lives not in relationship with her, but in a psychic fantasy constructed from his own needs, wounds, and archetypal patterns. He may claim that he cannot live without her, when in truth he cannot yet live with himself. His soul is trying to reach him, using her image as its medium. Obsession is thus the ego's reaction to an inner force that has not yet been made conscious. For the woman, this experience can be equally disorienting. She senses the intensity, the hunger, the fascination directed toward her, but she also feels its unreality. She may enjoy the attention or feel burdened by it. In either case, if she is unaware of the projection, she may begin to lose herself in the role she has been cast in. She becomes the anima figure in the man's psychic drama, and the danger is that she may confuse his projection with true recognition. When this happens, both individuals become trapped in illusion, serving unconscious forces rather than relating authentically. The way out of this projection is not through rejection, but through awareness. The man must withdraw the image from the woman and reflect inward, asking, "What does she represent within me? What part of my psyche is seeking union through her?" Only by turning within can he transform obsession into understanding, projection into integration. The woman, too, must remain rooted in her self-possession, resisting the temptation to play the archetype. It is only through such consciousness that the soul's call can be heard, not as possession, but as invitation. Erotic power is often misunderstood, reduced to physical desire or manipulation. But in its deepest psychological essence, it is a sacred and transformative force. Within the soul, eros is not merely the urge toward union with another, it is the call toward integration, the magnetic pull that draws us toward our own inner wholeness. The erotic encounter, when approached with consciousness, becomes a mirror through which the hidden aspects of the self emerge. It is not about possession or control, but about illumination. To feel deeply drawn to another is to be confronted with a part of ourselves that seeks recognition, and through this confrontation, the journey of individuation begins. In the encounter with the opposite sex, especially when charged with erotic intensity, we do not meet the person as they are, but as they awaken the archetypes within us. The man sees not merely a woman, but the anima, the soul image of his inner feminine. The woman, likewise, is drawn to the animus, the inner masculine principle activated by his presence. In this way, eros becomes a psychic key. The erotic attraction serves as a signal that something within us longs to be awakened. The erotic bond, then, becomes a sacred space where psychological material is revealed. Longing, fear, shadow, projections, unmet needs, divine potential. For the woman, erotic power is not about using sexuality to ensnare a man, but about embracing the fullness of her feminine energy in its mature, conscious form. It is the acceptance of her sensual nature, her emotional depth, her spiritual radiance, not for validation, but as an expression of her total being. This energy, when held with awareness, does not seduce, it initiates, it invites the masculine to rise, to confront his own unconscious, and to move beyond superficial desire into symbolic encounter. Erotic power in this sense becomes a call to transcend the ego and meet in the archetypal realm of soul. The path of individuation requires the activation of both masculine and feminine energies within the psyche. Erotic connection is one of the most powerful catalysts for this process because it strips away illusion. It demands vulnerability, presence, and the willingness to face not only the other, but the self. In the fire of erotic union, the masks fall, and what is revealed is the raw material of transformation. We do not merely fall in love with another, we fall into our own depths. To channel erotic energy consciously is to allow it to lead us inward, to the parts of the psyche that have been disowned or neglected. It is to use the intensity of longing not for gratification but for psychological revelation. In this way, erotic power becomes not a distraction from the spiritual path but one of its most potent expressions. It is the energy of creation, of union, of becoming. When held with reverence, it burns away falseness and invites the soul to emerge, whole and radiant, no longer fragmented between body and spirit, but unified in the fire of becoming. What we have uncovered is not a map for control, nor a formula for seduction, but a symbolic unveiling of psychic truths. The woman who stands in full relation to her erotic power, who channels it through self-possession and inner awareness, becomes not an object of obsession but a vessel of transformation. In her presence, a man may encounter not merely desire but the echo of his own soul calling him home. He is not drawn to her alone, but to what she evokes within him, the anima, the forgotten mystery, the inner feminine awaiting integration. The obsession he feels is not sickness, but signal. The fire that consumes him is not to be feared, but understood. When erotic energy is carried unconsciously, it traps both the man and the woman in a loop of projection and shadow. But when it is held with consciousness, it becomes the very path to individuation. It is through the tension of opposites, masculine and feminine, desire and restraint, self and other, that the self begins to emerge. In the crucible of relationship, the ego is confronted by forces greater than itself. And if the individuals are brave enough not to flee, not to grasp, not to idealize, but to witness, then that fire, once misunderstood as mere passion, becomes the sacred flame of psychological transformation. Thus, the truth is revealed. Obsession, longing, sexual magnetism, these are not merely human weaknesses but archetypal invitations. They are the soul's way of drawing us into deeper waters, where love is not performance and relationship is not possession, but where both man and woman become participants in the great alchemy of the psyche, each serving the other as mirror, threshold, and symbol of the divine.